right, you're welcome to the meeting with the Minister of Finance. And here we're going to be talking about the wisdom of finance and wealth. My name is Hakanzo Kenimiele, and I will be facilitating this particular session. For some people who might have been in the religious circle, I think this is also a disclaimer. So when you hear the term the Minister of Finance, I'm not talking about a physical governmental thing. It's a spiritual title, the Minister of Finance. So some of the things we might be talking about has a bit more spiritual significance, because we always believe that that which is unseen controls that which is seen. And the spiritual is the precursor of the physical. So we're going to be taking a look at wealth and finance from the perspective of the Minister of Finance. So let's get this started. The first thing we need to understand about money is because when we're talking about finance, the thing people start thinking about is money. But it's important to note that money is not the end. Money is a tool. Money is a resource. Money is something you use to get something. Money is like blood. Money is like battery, okay? It's a tool. It's something you need or something you use to get things done. And it's important to understand the fundamentals about money or the intricacies about money, because the perception people have of money is that once I have to get it, this is all my life is about. And if I don't get it, then I'm not getting the best out of life. No, money is like a pen. If you want to write something, you need a pen to write. You need ink. Okay, so money is just one of the things, one way of getting some things done, especially here on earth. And the fact that you now have to deal with people. So there's certain things about money that we're going to talk about moving forward. So what's the first thing? What is money? And you need to understand this. Money is actually a tool. It is a tool for exchange that is backed by legality. That means it's legal, okay? It's by normalcy, okay? It's become the norm. It's become the custom, or a lot of people have adopted that this is the tool that we will use for exchange, whether goods for services, goods for goods, services for services, as the case may be. Now, it is used for the communication and the storage of the perception of value. Now, I put the perception of value in bracket because it is not entirely what we use to communicate value, because value is a perception. Value is not a standard. Different things matter to different people based on their knowledge, their upbringing, their exposure, and what have you. So it's important to note this, that money is a tool. So when you have people who strive all they can to get money, or who are controlled only by money, then their priorities are not really in the right place. Now, what is finance? Finance is a bit different from money. Now, when we're talking about finance, finance in itself is a structure, is a system that you put together. And the purpose of that system or the purpose of that structure is to trap money, to attract money, to draw money in its direction, to hold money. So that means it must have storage capacity. It's also to grow money. So that means it must have a production and a reproductive capacity, and also locomotion, which is movement of money. Some of the things we might talk about in currency where we're moving. Now, it's important to get these things right because it allows you to have the right framework with regards to what money is, what finance is, and how we're gradually growing into the place of wealth. Now, what is currency? Currency is the strength of money. And currency usually talks about the cycle and the local acceptance of money. Now, the important thing you need to understand about currency is cycle. Now, when it comes to money, a cycle means that it's able to move from one hand to the other. And cycle is the proof that it's something that is commonly accepted, backed by legality, and all of that. So for example, if you have fake bills, fake notes, now it may not fully pass the test of cycle. That means going through the whole system. You might fool someone and give them a fake note, but there are certain places like banks or certain structured organizations that once the money comes into it, there is a red alert. So that means fake notes do not pass the test of cycle. Now, real currency passes the test of cycle. That means for validity, verity, and national acceptance. Now, when we're talking about value in itself, value is the trading coefficient of money. Okay, value is also perception based. So what do you mean? If you have a pen, you can choose to sell that pen for anything as long as you are able to communicate value. So you can have a drink and you sell it for $20. And you have the same drink, but you tell the person who's about to buy that this drink is 1948. It was produced in 1948 and it hasn't been touched. Now, by that communication, you've added value to it. And that value becomes the trading coefficient of money. So that means by reason of that, people will be naturally disposed to give more money because of the perception of value that has been created. Now, one of the important things about money, about wealth, is value. So you must be able to understand value as a denominator because that is what determines how wealthy you are. So for example, you've got 1 million naira and another person's got $1 million. Another person has got 1 million Bitcoin. Now, they might seem to have the same volume in quantity, but they do not all have the same value because they have different trading coefficients. Okay, so do you understand how that works? Now, you also need to understand that there is a role that time plays in wealth. Money grows and money gets lost, especially in value with time. Okay, and we already talked about value, that is the trading coefficient. Now, it's important for you to know that time plays a whole lot of deal, especially when you're thinking investment, when you're thinking life. So what does this mean? Do not always postpone the time that you're supposed to make certain actions, especially when it has to do with wealth or it has to do with money. Because as time goes on, it changes money. Now, sometimes it could improve the quality and sometimes it could reduce the quality. That means it could be a growth in value or a loss in value. But for every wealthy mind, you need to understand the place of time. What are you doing now? In the next 12 months, how do you want to make your situation, your circumstance, your perception of value increase? Okay, so that is how you must begin to think in time. In the next 10 years, you'd have children. In the next 10 years, you'd be married, or you're already married. In the next 10 years, you're thinking of starting your own business. How do you put all of those thoughts in line into the process of creating wealth for yourself? So time is one of the most fundamental denominators for wealth besides value. Now, wealth also has to do with territories, which is something many of us already know, but might not really be conscious of that fact. Now, a territory with regards to wealth is the area where the rules of money hold and is accepted and adopted. Different kinds of money, that's currency, have their legality in different territories. So every nation has its own official currency. Okay, so that currency has been tied to that territory. Now, it might not only be a physical territory, it might be a virtual territory. So as long as you're trading within the rules of a certain nation or a certain system, that is territory. So you must understand the territory you're dealing with because it has a lot to do with how wealthy you become. So I'll use Nigeria as an example again. If you work for a month in Nigeria, or let's just think about it. Look at the different continents that we have: Americas, Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe, and all the likes, and find out what the minimum wage in each of these continents are, like the average minimum wage, and now compare it to how wealthy people are simply because of the territory they were born into, or the territory they live, or the territory they found themselves. Okay, so when you're thinking about wealth, you also have to be thinking about territory, because the territory you are has something to do with the value of the currency, the volume of the currency, and a whole lot more things we might, touch on a bit. So let's take a look at what riches really mean. Now, when you say someone is rich, riches is actually in terms of quantity. So it is the quantity of resources or the quantity of money that is at your disposal. The quantity of money you've been able to trap, you've been able to store, and you are able to cycle. Okay, that means you have the authority over them. Okay, that's what you mean by riches. And you have volume of that. So you can't be rich if you do not have a storage device for your money or a storage facility. So if you don't have an account or a warehouse or something that you can store or reserve resources and money, you cannot be rich. Okay, because the first thing you have to think of when you're thinking about being a rich person is you must have a place to store things, a place to trap things, a place to keep things. Okay, so that is one of the fundamental things to know how rich you are. Now, the quality of the resources of your money you now have cannot determine how rich you are in comparison to people in other territories and other locations. So let's take a look at wealth. There's a slight difference between riches and wealth. Riches has to do with quantity and wealth has to do with quality. So when we're looking at wealth, wealth is the qualitative system that has the potential by experience. That means it's something practical. It's not just something theoretical. By experience, to generate money in such a way, or money, resources, finances, in such a way that mastery has been gained. So wealth is usually connoted with mastery. Riches is usually connoted with storage. So when you've been able to master the experience that allows you to create a qualitative system. Now, this mastery can be gained through spiritual, mental, or material systems. And the aim of this mastery is to produce, to project, and to transfer resources. So remember, riches is about storage. Wealth is about quality. And by quality, we're talking about production and reproduction, projection, where you can amplify the resources at your disposal and also transfer such resources. Now, the transfer of such resources is in the form of a seed. So that means that everywhere these resources get to, they also have the ability to reproduce themselves. Okay, that's why we have a lot of rich people, but very few wealthy people. Okay, because wealth has a lot more to do with mastery of systems, spiritual systems, mental systems, and also material systems. So begin to ask yourself, are you rich or are you wealthy? Let's move on. Now, there are pillars of drawing your finance, and we're going to talk about this in a bit. Now, the first thing you need to understand in the pillars of drawing finance, remember, finance has to do with the system or structure, with which your resources can be gathered. The first thing is skill. Skill is what allows you, that gives you the platform to transfer resources, to transfer money, and to trade. Okay. Now, depending on the skill you have, the more valuable that skill is, the more transfer and trading of money you get to have. Okay. So when you're thinking of your finances, the first thing you need to think of is your skill. How skillful are you? One. What value is on that skill? Because someone who has a more valuable skill has the potential of making more than someone who has less valuable skills. Now, someone who has no skills at all is usually at the bottom of the chain. Okay. Now, the skills could be physical skills, mental skills, spiritual skills. Skill is skill. The important thing you just have to notice, how valuable is this skill from the perception of the place that you are, your location, your economy, and the people who live in such a place. Now, the second thing beyond skill is relationship. You must learn how to find and invest in good relationships, because relationships is the connection to the holders of resources. So you can have skills, but if you don't have relationship, you will not be able to transfer or trade, because what makes you transfer and trade is you have other people to transfer it. So you need the quality of relationship that value your skill, know the importance of your skill, and you must be able to communicate that skill. Finding these relationships is one of the things that helps you to draw your finance, that traps your finance, and helps you create a system around it. I already mentioned this. Territory is also important. Now, it's important in commerce and economy because money dwells in places. Okay, money moves. You get to know this. Money dwells in places. So money has a dwelling place. That means a territory where when you're in it, there is a lot of capital. For example, during the time of Solomon in the Bible recorded that there was so much gold in Israel that gold lost value. It means that that was the dwelling place, a territory for money, for finance, because you had lots of it and people had access to it. Now, money also has a moving place or a transition place. So over a period of time, you notice that there is brain drain from an area, there is talent drain, and then money and capacity is moving from place to another place. You can still stay there in a while, but it's important for you as a person to keep your ears and eyes for money. Now, money in the sense of finance. Remember, finance is talking about structure. So when you notice that a place is getting less profitable, there's a very high chance that money is gradually leaving that place. Finances, capital is leaving that place. And that might not be a very good sign. Okay, so maybe the GDP is reducing, and as a nation, it's not really doing well. These are not good signs. And finally, you have vacant or empty places. These are places where probably there was once money, but money had completely left the place and the place is now in total shambles. Okay, so territories are also important in the pillars of drawing finance. Three important things: your skill, connections and relationships, and the territory where those relationships are and where those skills are appreciated. Now, in the virtual world that we're at, technology, internet has made things easier. So you may not physically be in the territory while you can still build relationship with people in the territory. So the key thing here is relationship, okay? But you must be highly skillful because that's what we allow the relationships to be able to, connect with you and transfer or trade with you. And also territories where money has moved to or money is moving to is very important. And the final thing is grace. Now, grace is a term for blessing or wisdom. This is usually supernatural or spiritual. It's not something you can see, but based on your spiritual practices or the unctions upon you or the rituals that you perform, you'll have the impartation of blessings or grace that allows these things to favor you, especially relationship and territory. So you have the wisdom that guides you to the right territory. You have the blessing that allow the right relationships to favor you, and you have the impartation that gives you skill and amplifies that skill for other people to appreciate it. So now I'm going to talk about my experience of ley lines and the gates of finance in Lagos, Nigeria. And it's one of the reasons why this session is not public, because of the things I'll be sharing here. So I used to work on Lagos Island. And so I moved from the mainland to the island almost every day to work. And so one particular day I was coming back from work and the eye of my spirit were opened, okay? I was in the middle of the third mainland bridge, like the picture you're seeing, where the waters are. And my eyes opened in the spirit and I saw ley lines. If you don't know what ley lines are, they are like coordinates, like longitude and latitudes, but these are more spiritual coordinates they are coordinates of power centers, you know, and spiritual reinforcements. So I saw those ley lines over the waters, that's the waters of the third mainland bridge, you know, and they were like green lines, like latitude and longitude lines. And there was a certain coordinate that was given to me. I would not mention that coordinate for obvious reasons. Now, that was the coordinate to a gate of finance. And that gate was in the middle of the water, the third mainland bridge, the water where the third mainland bridge crosses over. And so after getting that coordinate, I went into the water through the gate that was opened in that water after finding that coordinate. And this was what I saw. I saw a being that had an oblong head. The head looked like a fish, okay? And that being was telling me some things about money, about finance, and all of that, which I might not be at liberty to share here. But the important thing I want to share with you is there was someone who was a smith inside that water, okay? Like a blacksmith, or let me call it a goldsmith. So this person, that being, directed my attention to that person, and the person was striking something. Okay, you know how blacksmiths strike stuff. And when I noticed what the person was striking, or the being was striking, that being was hitting gold. So every time it was hitting it, it was turning it to gold. Now, that being that had the fish's face told me that what that person is hitting is money or finance, as it were. So he told me that anyone who this gold that was being hit is given to, the person becomes a point of attraction of finance. Just the same way everyone gravitates towards the gold, the metal gold, that forces will begin to gravitate towards, you know, that person. And this is what I got from that. Immediately I left that experience and I came out of that water. Every time I crossed the third mainland bridge, I would always make certain invocations. I would always make certain confessions. Okay, and this, I would mention a part of them, the one that could be useful to you. So this, every time I'm crossing that place, because I know the point where I saw that gate. So every time I am close to that point, I always speak these certain words. You know, and there's a part in the scripture that says that treasures of darkness and hidden riches in secret places, then I call that to me. So I make pronouncements and I call the treasures of darkness and the hidden riches of secret places are mine, come to me. And then because I had the spiritual experience, I know what that gold looks like. You know, so I envision that gold that I saw, which is finance, the power of finance, and then I begin to call it to myself. And so every time, whether you're in Lagos, you know, I don't know, or you find yourself in Lagos and you bypass past the third mainland bridge, I'm just telling you that there is a gate in that water, a gate that leads to a financial portal. So every time you're there, always speak. You can just pray in tongues if you can, or speak words, or attract finance to yourself. Now, the way to do this, remember the things we talk about. You have to speak in the areas of skill, in the area of relationships, in the area of territories, and in the area of grace. Don't ask for money, because the spirit realm don't see money that way. Resources are seen in the areas of skill, relationships, territories, and then grace, that is spiritual impartation. Okay, so every time you find yourself along those lines, call that forth, you know, and then begin to appropriate it upon yourself. Let's just move on. Now, structuring for wealth is something that is very important, and this is the reason why a lot of people don't become rich or do not get wealthy. So here is the thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things are important in structuring your wealth. The first thing is the container, which is the material, okay? That is what makes you up, the kind of material that makes you up. Now, can that material withstand pressure? Because if that material, now you are the material, so get it right. If that material cannot withstand pressure, you cannot get wealthy. Because remember, wealth is quality, Riches is quantity, but you need structure. You need a container for that. Now, that container is you. It's not just what you can do, it is you. So you have to make sure that your makeup, that's physical, mental, and spiritual, is able to withstand pressure. Now, the more pressure you are able to withstand, the more valuable you are. It's one of the reasons why things like diamond are very expensive, things like gold, because they go through fire, they go through pressure. Okay. Now, this is the secret. I really just don't want to be too plain with it. You must make sure that what makes you up as a person, physically, mentally, and spiritually, is able to withstand pressure, policy pressure, pressure of weather, emotional pressure, spiritual pressure, and even physical pressure. Now, when that you are able to withstand such pressure, it announces you and naturally begins to draw things in your direction. Okay, so the quality of the material. So when things are shining, it attracts people. Okay, just like lustrous gold or diamond. Because of the pressure changes them and fashions their makeup in such a way that it's able to draw people's attention. Okay, I'm speaking in parables by this, so I hope you'll be able to get me. Now, the second thing is the container, which is the size of the container. Now, it might be of a good material, but if it's of the wrong size, it will not be able to hold enough. So that means that you need to ask yourself, how much can you take? And this is synonymous with the first thing. So how much pressure can you take? How much space can you take? And this is by reason of your size, how large you are, okay? How much time has passed over you and how have you been able to use time to your advantage, okay? All of these are some of the things that helps you increase your size. There's also a mentality involved. Okay, so for example, when plastic is being heated, it has the ability to melt or change size. But for some people, when it melts, they just leave it that way. But instead, what are the things that you can do? Now, the things you can do is to make sure that while the heat is affecting the plastic, you begin to move it and expand it inside. It's just like a potter who makes clay. While he's turning that clay, then he has the ability to push it forward, stretch it, and allow it to increase in size. So it's the same thing that you have to do. It's the same thing that you have to do for yourself. Now, the next thing is actually now the content, which is the nature that you have. Now, this is similar to currency and value. The content talks about your character. Character is important because it's one of the things that announces you to the right relationships. Okay, so the content you have is very key. Your sense of character, how you present yourself, your perception, your branding is very key. Are you neat? Are you tidy? How do you speak? How do you present yourself? All of this determine the kind of things that get attracted to you. Okay, so you must work on your branding, you must work on your content, you must work on your nature, you must work on your character. Now, also on the content is the taste. So when people experience you, how rich are you in your education, in your exposure? You have to be rich like fine wine. That is what shows class. That is what brings the right set of people to you. So if you've noticed that the wrong set of people are coming to you, is because of your content. It's because of the nature of your content and the taste of your content. Now, the nature of your content is important. Anyone can enjoy the taste, but the first thing you have to do is to make sure that the nature is right, because that is what creates the perception for the right kind of people. Okay, so you need to know if you want to be a premium brand, mentally or even spiritually, what are the kind of things that you interface with. Note this, all of the things I'm talking about have spiritual and mental significances, okay? So it's not just in the physical sense of it. Now, the next thing is the environment. So the environments must be able to sustain the container and preserve the content. So here's the thing. If you're in an environment that limits you, if you have the power to move environment and go to an environment that gives you more freedom to express yourself and your content, please do. Do not be loyal to an environment that limits you. Okay? Be loyal to an environment or a system that brings out the best in you. And this is why a lot of generations have limited themselves, because they were loyal to environments. Oh, this is where I was born. This is this and that. And the environment is an environment that money is already transitioning out of. Okay, that is not in the best of anybody. Okay, and the final thing in structuring of wealth is purpose. Your purpose have to be tied to people, to skill, to community, and to territory. You must begin to think of these things: people, community, territory. How can you solve problems for these three things? The more problems you're able to solve, or the more value you're able to bring to people, to community, and the territories, the better your structure for wealth is. Because remember, container, content, environment, and purpose. So let's take a look at the pragmatics. I've already talked about this in some shape or size. So the first thing is, who are you? In your spirit, in your soul, in your body. You know, I already talked about that. If the state of your spirit, soul, and body has a stronger influence in how wealthy you are than actually the things you do. Because the spirit, soul, and body is what influences perception. So you must be able to make sure that focus more on spirit, soul, and body development. And then you see how things begin to change for you. Then the next thing is, who do you answer to? Who do you report to? The relationships in your life: spiritual, mental, physical. Very important. Who are your mentors? What kind of associations do you have around you? All of these things go a long way. Now, who do you relate with? Now, who do you answer to talks about the people above you. Who do you relate with talks about the people beneath you or below you. And how you relate with these people really matters a lot. Okay, and you must understand the intricacies of this as well. So your patterns, your mentalities, your ritual, what are the things you do? You know, we talked about cycles. What are the things you do in your life? How do you create space when you're thinking about your container, your content, your environment? How do you put yourself in the right light? Are you someone who keeps procrastinating? Every time you procrastinate, time is not working in your favor. And you need time for wealth, okay? And also the place of process and laws, cause and effect. Everything you do today is as a result of what you've done yesterday. So if you want to change your tomorrow, you have to start changing the things you do today. The people you relate with, the people you answer to, your patterns, your mentalities, your rituals, the things you do on a normal basis. Do you pray? Do you have confessions? Do you read books? What is your relationship with information and knowledge? All of these things affect the quality of your life because they set processes and laws into action, and these things now determine what comes to you or what doesn't. Now, there's a quote. It says that nothing can stay the same or stay in the state of improvement if you stop applying force and power to keep it alive. And if you have a system that gives it purpose, significance, structure, as well as the energy to keep it going and to make it forward. What does this mean? If you want to be wealthy, you cannot be idle. You have to think about systems and structures. You must think about power and forces. You must think about purpose, significance, structure, and energy, because these are the things that helps you to drive wealth, riches, substance, resources, value, favor, grace, and all of the things that you actually need, to move from where you are to move to where you should be. Now, this is it. I know that a lot of people can have questions based on some of the things you've heard. Now, if you have questions, you can always comment below or try to reach me. I'll put the emails or the platforms you can reach me in the description section, and I would see how I can be, of help to people. I would also have certain sessions with the LAMAD community where I can answer questions and share, insightful tips with them. Okay, so this is where we're closing the curtain with the Minister of Finance. Now, the Minister of Finance is a person, is a being, okay, and he imparts wisdom of finance and wealth. Now, because he's a spiritual being, the way he communicates might not be the way wherewith people who are just thinking physically or mentally will be able to access, and that's why I've been able to put this together. Now, some of the things I've mentioned here, I would not want you to just take a look at the surface. If possible, you can listen to this over and over again, and then you begin to get the spiritual essence, of the things that has been dropped. Usually when I have sessions like this, I usually like to end it on a note of impartation of prayer. So wherever you're listening to this, I want to speak a word of prayer over you. And therefore, I release unto everyone who is listening or watching this for the impartation of grace and wisdom. The impartation of grace and wisdom that would equip you with skills to spot and recognize opportunities that would help you to grow your mind, spirit, soul, and body. And also the connection, the sense of character that will allow you to connect with the right people, the right connections, people who hold resources. I pray for wisdom to sense the transactions and the gradient of finance in your territory and in the places where you are, and the ability to latch onto ahead places where money is gravitating or moving towards. I release this unction upon you. You have eyes that see and you have ears that hear, to the glory and the honor of God, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen and amen. Praise the name of the Lord. All right, so this is where we're going to end this meeting with the Minister of Finance. Like I said before, if you have questions, you can always ask questions, and I'll try to get through as much as I can. All right, have a wonderful day, and I hope you get the very best that life can afford and life can offer you.